Hello everyone. Welcome to your physics class of class 6th. I hope you all will be fine. Students, in our previous video, we discussed about effects of friction. Now today in this video, we are going to discuss about factors affecting the force of friction and also types of friction. Okay, so let's begin our class. Factors affecting the force of friction. As you can see here, first factor is the smoothness of the surface. Means the two surfaces that are in contact with each other, the smoothness of those surfaces affect the force of friction. Suppose this is a table and this is a ball. If this ball is rolling on this table, so friction, that is friction of by this table on this ball, will depend upon the smoothness of this ball and also of this table. Okay, surface of this table and also surface of the ball, how their surfaces are. The force of friction is more between rough surfaces and less between smooth surfaces. Means the friction that will act on this ball depends upon the smoothness of the two surfaces that are in contact. So if the surface of this ball and the table is rough, then friction will be more. But if this table and the ball will have smooth surface, the friction that will act on this ball will be less. There will be no friction between two perfectly smooth surfaces. But if the surface of this ball and also of this table is perfectly smooth, means if the surface of this ball and also of this table is perfectly smooth, then there will be no friction between these two bodies. So, but this is an ideal situation, means perfectly smooth surfaces. This is not possible because this is an ideal situation which is not practically possible. Okay. Now we will see activity for understanding this. Take a small ball, roll the ball on a wooden surface. Note the distance which the ball covers on wooden surface before it stops. Means you have to roll a ball on a wooden surface. Note the distance which the ball covers on this wooden surface before it stops. Means when you will roll this ball on the wooden surface, it will cover certain distance, and after covering a certain distance it will stop. So you have to note the distance. Okay, now then roll the same ball on a glass surface. Now you have to take a glass surface instead of this wooden surface. Now again you have to roll this ball and you have to note the distance of the ball, okay, on the glass surface before it stops. You will notice that the distance moved on the wooden surface is less than the distance moved on a glass surface. That is, the friction on a glass surface is less than on the wooden surface. Why? Because glass surface is smooth as compared to the wooden surface. You can do this activity yourself at home. You can try. You can take a ball and first roll it on a wooden table or any rough surface and then on a smooth surface. You will notice that the friction that will be produced by the smooth surface will be less as comparison to the rough surface. Okay. Now second point is the nature of medium, that is solid, liquid or gas, in which the body moves. A solid, liquid or gas all exert force of friction on a moving body. The force of friction between a solid and solid is more. It is less between a solid and a liquid, and still less in solid and a gas. Means the friction between two solids are more as comparison to a solid and a liquid, and is still less between a solid and a gas. Means if you will try to move your hand in water, that will be means you will feel more friction by the water as comparison to when you will move your hand in air. Air exert less friction as comparison to the liquid. Okay. Now the third one is weight of the moving body on the surface. Friction also, this weight of the moving body also affect the force of friction. Greater the weight of the body, greater will be the friction. Okay, on the moving surface, more is the friction on the body by the surface. Means if you will move body uh, with more weight, friction will be more. If you will move a body which has less weight, friction will be less. Okay, now these are the factors affecting the force of friction. Okay, now we will discuss about the kinds of friction. Friction is of three types, three kinds. First one is static friction, then sliding friction, and then rolling friction. We will discuss them one by one. First one is static friction. Suppose we want to slide an object on a surface. We apply a force as push. Means suppose we want to slide an object on a surface, okay, and we will apply a force as a push. If the force applied is less, the object does not move due to the force of friction on the object by the surface opposing the motion. Now suppose if you want to slide this box on this surface, and if you will push this box, okay, by applying less force, okay, then what will happen? This box will not move. Why? Because the force of friction is balancing your force that you are applying on this box. If the force applied is less, the object does not move due to the force of friction on the object by the surface opposing the motion. Means if you are applying the force from left to right, this opposing force that will this friction force will act in right to left direction. And if you are applying less force, then the force of friction due to the force of friction, this box will not move. Now, when you gradually increase the force on the object, now if you increase your force that you are applying on this box, if you are increasing it gradually, means आप इस आराम आराम से अपना force बढ़ा रहे हैं, the force of friction on the object will also increase. Now the force of friction acting on this box will also increase. Okay, and the body does not move, and now also this box will not move. A stage is reached when the force of friction becomes such that the net force on the object is zero. And if you are gradually increasing your force, a stage will come at which point the net force, means the force that you are applying and the frictional force, balance each other. Then in that case the net force will be is zero and the object remains stationary. Then also the object will remain stationary. This box will not move, but it is just about to slide over the surface. But if you will slightly increase your force, now this box will start moving. Okay, at that point, at this stage, the force of friction acting on the object is called the static friction. And that stage, when by increasing a little amount of force, this box will start moving. Okay, that point, that stage is known as static friction. Okay, so that stage, at that stage, the force of friction is known as the static friction. Now, if we apply the force, now if the applied force is slightly increased, now if the applied force is slightly increased on this box, the object begins to slide or roll on the surface. Thus, the maximum opposing force between the object and the surface in contact with it, so long as the object remains stationary, even on applying the external force, is called the static friction. Understood? Thus static friction is self-adjusting. Why? Because means what is static friction? If when you are applying a force on this box to move it, and the stage comes when by increasing a little amount of force, this box will start moving. Okay, that stage, means at that stage the force of friction is known as the static friction. Okay, now once the body starts sliding on the surface, the applied force can be decreased to keep the body sliding on the surface. Now if you will when the body starts sliding on the surface, means when this box starts sliding on this surface, Now you by decreasing the force by a little amount, if you will decrease the applied force, this body will keep sliding on the surface. Okay. And sliding friction. When the body begins to slide on a surface, the force exerted by the surface on an object is called a sliding friction. Suppose this is the surface on which this box is moving. So means this box is sliding on this surface. Now the force that is applied by this surface on this box that is sliding on it is known as sliding friction. Okay, the force exerted by this surface on this object is called sliding friction. Okay, when this box is sliding on this surface, it is equal to the force required to keep the object in motion over the surface, and this is that sliding friction is equal to the force required to keep the object in motion over the surface. The sliding friction is less than the static friction. Okay. Third one is rolling friction. When an object rolls over a surface, the force which opposes the rolling motion of the object is called the rolling friction. Means when an object rolls over a surface, the force which opposes the rolling motion, means the force that acts on this by this surface on this ball that is rolling on the over its surface. So the force which opposes the rolling motion of the object is called the rolling friction. It is less than the sliding friction on a body of same mass. Means rolling friction is less than the sliding friction on a body of same mass. Suppose this is a box of 1 kg. So the sliding, and it is sliding on this surface. So the force frictional force, means the sliding frictional force, that sliding friction that acts on this body is more as comparison to this ball that is rolling on this surface. So the rolling friction in this case will be less as comparison to this box. Okay, both have same mass, but rolling friction will be less on this ball as comparison to the sliding friction that acts on this box. Okay. Now this is why to move the heavy objects on the ground, rollers are used. Means to move heavy objects, rollers are used, because rolling friction is less than sliding friction, and because of that less force will be applied to move the body, okay, that heavy object on the ground. That will be easier for us to move that heavy object on the ground because of those rollers. In machines, generally the sliding motion of its part is changed to the rolling motion by the use of ball bearings. Means in machines, when the two parts are in contact with each other, are generally sliding on both the are sliding on each other, but that is changed to rolling motion by use of ball bearing between those parts. For example, ball bearings are used between the hubs and axle of a ceiling fan and also a bicycle. Why? Because without that ball bearings, both the parts will slide over each other, and because of that, sliding friction will be more, and you have to apply more force on the bicycle. By using the ball bearings, that sliding friction changes into rolling friction. Means now the parts will means on the parts rolling friction will act, and you have to apply less force for moving your bicycle. The vehicles like cars, trucks, scooters, bicycles and luggage trolleys are etc. are provided with wheels. Okay, why? Because of rolling friction is less than sliding friction. Now you can see, do you know here? Static friction is greater than sliding friction, and sliding friction is greater than rolling friction. Okay. Now what you have to do, you have to read this lesson up to means these topics, the factors affecting the force of friction and also the kinds of friction by yourself, so it will be more clear to you. And further explanation of the lesson we will continue in our next video. Thank you.